Sahana Vavatu, Sahano Bhunaktu, Sahaviryan Karavavahai, Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om. Okay. Welcome to our webcast of our Saturday morning class on Shankaracharya's Atma Bodha. Where we left off in our prior class, we had introduced the idea of ahankara. Now we need to understand that word and principle very clearly. It's crucial to understanding these verses. It's crucial to understanding your true nature. We use the word ahankara in Vedanta, not in the Hindi sense of pride, ahankara, although in Sanskrit it can have that same meaning. But here we're using it as a technical term to mean that which is the kara, the cause of aham, I-ness. We in English will call it ego, but again, ego not in the sense of pride, ego in a technical sense, as that what I described at the end of the last class, the sense of I-ness, the sense of individuality, the feeling of being an individual person. And the only way that makes sense is to compare it to when it's absent. And you might remember from the last class, I gave the example, when you're listening to your favorite music and you find yourself getting lost in that music. When you're lost in the music, you still hear the music, you still experience the music. So who gets lost? When you say, I was lost in the music, the one that gets lost is ahankara, sense of individuality. And we're going to define it more carefully as I thought. And we'll develop that idea of I thought in just a moment. Note that the ahankara, or I thought feeling of individuality, is absent when you're lost in the music or some other experience. It's also not present in dreamless sleep. You don't feel like an individual person in dreamless sleep. You do in a dream, but not in dreamless sleep. Also, in certain kinds of samadhi, you may or may not have experienced, it's also absent in certain kinds of samadhi. Now, to explore that I thought better, and we need to before we see this next verse 25 we'll come to in just a moment. To explore it further, when you say, I am sad, who does that word I refer to? Remember, I is a pronoun, and pronouns always have a referent. So to whom or what does that word I refer to? Well, based on our discussion so far, it doesn't refer to consciousness, your true nature. The true nature of you, your true nature, is consciousness, but consciousness doesn't become sad for the reason we've been talking about for several classes now. Just as this crystal doesn't truly become orange in the presence of the cloth, your consciousness doesn't truly become sad in the presence of sadness in your mind. Just as the orangeness belongs to the cloth, not to the clear crystal, in the same way, sadness belongs to your mind, not to consciousness. Consciousness doesn't become sad. So when you say, I am sad, the pronoun I cannot refer to the pronoun I. Where did I just lost my train of thought? Excuse me. The pronoun I cannot refer to consciousness. Then to whom or what does that word I, pronoun I, refer to? Well, you might think, oh, mind. So I belongs to mind. We said sadness belongs to the mind. So when you say I am sad, does it mean mind am sad? Am is a first person pronoun. There's already a problem here. Watch this. Based on some of our prior discussions, we said there are two kinds of stuff in the universe: physical stuff, like your body, and non-physical stuff, subtle stuff, sukshma stuff, made of subtle elements, sukshma bhutas, including your mind. So your body is a physical thing. Your mind is a non-physical or subtle thing. Your body as a thing is jada, inert. Your mind as a subtle thing is jada, inert. How can an inert thing be sad? That doesn't make sense either. When you say, I am sad, let me rephrase that. The experience of sadness cannot belong to an insentient thing like your mind. Only a sentient entity can have an experience, not an insentient thing like your mind. So when you say, I am sad, the experiencer of sadness cannot be mind, because it's inert, cannot be consciousness, because it's unchanging and doesn't get affected by sadness. Also, bear in mind that you don't say, I am a physical body. You're separate. I possess a physical body, but I am not the physical body. In the same way, I possess a mind. I am not that mind that I possess. The body is a possession separate from me. The mind is a possession separate from me. Just helping you understand who, leading up to this question, who is the experiencer of sadness? When you say, I am sad, who is that one, the experiencer of sadness? Clearly, it's not consciousness, nor is it the mind. Remember, mind is inert. So the one who says, I am sad, that is ahankara. Ahankara is the I thought. It is a thought in your mind that says, I am. Very interesting. In the last, I joked with you in the last class. It's a thought masquerading as a conscious being. Thoughts are thoughts, but among all your thoughts, there's one unique thought, a renegade thought, a thought that says, I'm not a thought that says, I'm a conscious being. It's a deluded thought. That's the ego. That's the ahankara. But it's a thought that says, I am. And then when there's sadness in the mind, that thought gets connected with the sadness, and what arises is the experience, I am sad. So please note, for that experience, I am sad, to arise, both factors are required. Consciousness is required, otherwise there's no experience whatsoever. Mind is also required, because mind is the locus of sadness. There's a third factor that's required, right? Ahankara. When these three factors are present, consciousness, mind, ahankara, and I suppose we have to add sadness, 4. This is a little complex. This is the depth of analysis that we find in Vedanta. Look at this. We're taking that simple experience, I am sad, and resolving it into 4 separate components. The consciousness that illumines your mind, the mind itself that's illumined by consciousness, the sadness that's present in your mind, and then the I thought, ahankara, because of which you can say, I am sad. Again, consciousness isn't sad, mind isn't sad. Who is sad? That I, in the statement, I am sad, that is ahankara. We can call it I thought. My guru, Pujya Swami Dayananda, was fond of that expression, I thought, but also sense of individuality, feeling like an individual person. I think you've got this sense by now. So that I thought then is the, one more thought from the prior discussion, that I thought is the locus of suffering. Only when that I is present, I thought is present, do you say, I am suffering. Suppose sadness is present, but the I thought is not. When is the I thought not present? We've said deep sleep, samadhi, and being lost in some experience. So suppose you're either having samadhi or lost in some kind of experience, but your mind is simultaneously sad. Right? It's an odd situation, I admit. I'm just trying my best to explain. So imagine sadness is present in your mind, but the I thought is not. What would that be like? There would be the experience of sadness. Absolutely. Just like when you're lost in the music. I thought is absent, but you experience the music. So if sadness was present in your mind and the I thought was not, you would experience sadness, but you wouldn't be able to say, I am sad, because it's the presence of the ahankara that allows you to feel, have that statement, I am sad. Just like when you're lost in the music, you don't say, I am lost in the music. Remember, we had this discussion. So similarly, if sadness is present in your mind and the I thought is not, you won't have the sense, I am sad. You'll experience sadness. You won't have the sense, I am sad, and as a result, you won't suffer. Because there's no individual person to suffer. That suffering is contingent on that I thought, that ahankara. In the absence of the ahankara, there's no one to suffer. There's an English expression, no one is home, not physically, but in your mind, no one is home to be sad. Sadness is experienced, but there's no I to own the sadness. There's no I thought who can say, I am sad. This is subtle. I hope you can get it. And in all honesty, some meditation which allows you to observe that I thought coming and going helps. The other thing that'll help, remember I suggested that you watch my video on ahankara, ego, an intimate, I think it was an intimate dialogue with your ego. If you go to the previous class, you'll find a link in the comment, not in the comments, in the description. Also in the comments, I think, you'll find a link to that video. That video will be very helpful for you to understand clearly what is ego. We need to understand it to make sense out of this next series of verses. I think you get it sufficiently well. So let us continue with verse 25. Repeat after me. Atmano vikriya nasti, Atmano vikriya nasti, buddhir bodho na jatvati, buddhir bodho na jatvati. Jiva sarvamalam jnatva, Jiva sarvamalam jnatva, Jnata drashteti muhyati. Jnata drashteti muhyati. First half we've already been discussing. It says, in any experience, Atmanaha, for Atma, for pure consciousness, Vikriya na asti. There is no change. Atma is unchanging. Atma undergoes no change, just as the crystal undergoes no change in the presence of the cloth. In the same way, consciousness, Atma, undergoes no change in the presence of mind, in the presence of sadness. On the other hand, it says here, buddhehe, for the buddhi, mind in general, intellect in particular, for that mind, bodha, here bodha means consciousness, not knowledge. Bodha can mean knowledge, but here it means consciousness. Bodha, consciousness, na jatu iti. We have to break the words apart. Na jatu, not at all. There is no consciousness at all. So it says, the first half of the verse says that consciousness is unchanging, and the mind has no consciousness at all. What Shankara is explaining here very tersely is what we just discussed in the introduction. When you say, I am sad, who is it that is sad? Not consciousness. Why? Atmanaha vikriya nasti. Consciousness doesn't undergo change, so consciousness can't become happy. Consciousness can't become sad. Consciousness is unchanging. Vikriya nasti. There is no change for consciousness. But then what about the mind? It says here, Shankara says, buddhehe, for the mind, bodha najatu. There is no consciousness at all. We've said before, like your body is made of inert physical elements, your mind is made of inert subtle elements. Your body is not a conscious being. Your mind is not a conscious being. So Shankara is making it very clear. In the first half of this verse, when you say, I am sad, that I who is sad cannot be consciousness, because consciousness is unchanging. That I who says I am sad cannot be the buddhi, mind or intellect, because the mind or intellect by nature is jada, inert. It's not a sentient being. It cannot independently experience anything at all. Then how do we experience anything? It's, as I think we've discussed this before, we're going to discuss this much more. When, we did discuss it, when consciousness is in, I keep putting it backwards, when the mind is in the presence of consciousness, that's when experience becomes possible. Consciousness itself can't account for experience because it's unchanging. Mind alone can't account for any kind of experience because it's inert. But when you put that mind in the presence of consciousness, we have that proximity, that closeness between the two, then experience arises. And when you put the two together, we have a name for that. You may not think of it as such, but the name for mind in the presence of consciousness, we call that one Jiva, the next word. Now, Jiva conventionally is living being. Absolutely true. But here, we're using the word Jiva in kind of a more limited sense, technical sense. Jiva is the one who says, I am sad. Jiva here refers to that ahankara. And that's what we see in this next line. Jivaha sarvam alam jnatva. Jiva, the individual person, Who is that individual person? We've got that conscious mind in the presence of consciousness is this jiva, this individual person, jnatva, considering itself, thinking, knowing itself to be sarvam alam. Sarvam, all this, alam, is this much only. This is very cryptic, Shankara, because he has to fit just a side point. These verses have just 32 syllables in the entire verse. Here Shankaracharya is expressing some extremely profound philosophical truths in just a handful of syllables. It causes him to be very terse in his mode of expression. That happens a lot, and not just in Atma Bodha, in many, many texts. Even in the Bhagavad Gita, some of the verses are also very terse like this. Not all of them, a few of them. Here, Shankara very tersely says, jnatva, having considered. Who is considering jiva, the consciousness and mind together, forming that jiva, that conscious being, sentient being? That's not a bad definition. Jiva, sentient being. Who is that sentient being? Mind in the presence of consciousness. Sarvam, everything, alam, and that much only. Considering itself to be sarvam, considering sarvam, everything. Everything means what? Body, mind, senses, intellect. Remember, we divided up those 17 principles, all the principles, the five kinds of prana, 5 kinds of organs of action, 5 kinds of sense organs, these 15 plus the mind, manas, and buddhi, intellect, these 17 factors we considered before, which all together make up the subtle body, sukshma sharira. You remember all of that. So the physical body, plus these 17 elements that comprise the subtle body, sarvam, all of these, considering oneself to be sarvam, all of these, alam, and that much only, that much. In fact, nice translation for alam in Hindi is when you say bus, enough, that much and that much only. That's the sense of the word alam. So considering yourself to be the body, mind, senses, etc., that much and that much alone. When that I thought arises in your mind, the one that says, I am sad, that I identifies itself in terms of your body, mind, senses, etc., right? When you say, I am a son or daughter. Who is that son or daughter? Not consciousness, not mind, not body. Body comes closer, but body again is a thing, an insentient thing. Mind is an insentient thing. So who is it that says, I am a son or daughter? The one that says I is that ego, I thought, ahankara. It's the ahankara that says, I am a son or daughter, I am a mother or father, I am a doctor, an engineer, whatever is your profession, right? I am male or female, I am young or old, I am healthy or I am weak, I am intelligent or I am dull. The one who says I am is that I thought. All of those different kinds of self-identity, self-identification. Who owns all those identities? Mother, father, daughter, son, engineer, doctor, male, female. Who says I am all these? As we said before, consciousness doesn't say I am. Consciousness is unchanging. Nor does your mind say, I am. Your mind is an inert, subtle thing. The one who says, I am, is the I thought. Watch this. The I thought in the mind, in the presence of consciousness. Subtle, but very deeply and well thought out. When mind is in the presence of consciousness, there arises in that mind the I thought, the thought that says, I am mother, father, son, daughter, etc., etc., etc. Brilliant analysis that's, I think, unique to Advaita Vedanta. At least I haven't seen it anywhere else. So, that Jiva sarvam alam jnatva, the I thought that says, I am this Jiva, this living being, and I am this much only. Jnatva, having made that wrong conclusion. Again, the truth of who you are is consciousness. The essence of who you are is consciousness. The consciousness behind your mind, the consciousness that illumines the mind, the consciousness that even illumines your I thought. Notice when the I thought goes away in deep sleep, I thought goes away. In samadhi, I thought goes away. When you're lost in the music, I thought goes away. But consciousness doesn't go away. That consciousness is your essential nature. That's the true I. If we can make that kind of differentiation, consciousness is the real I, whereas ahankara, I thought, is the imposter I, if we can call it such. Jnatva, having made this false assumption, jnata drashta iti muhyati. Muhyati, one becomes deluded, confused. And confused in what way? You get confused by saying, I am jnata. Jnata means knower. I know what is happening around me right now. I know what is happening in my mind. I am the knower. And drashta. Drashta means seer. I am the knower and seer. We could just go on and on. So I am the knower. I am a seer. I am a mother. I am a father. These are all kinds of self-identification. Sometimes I am a knower of you or whatever is happening around me. Sometimes I am a seer if I see you or something else. Sometimes I consider myself a mother, a father, a son, a daughter, engineer, that whole long list. All of these are different kinds of self-identification, and all of these different kinds of self-identification arise in the presence of the I thought, ego. In the presence of the ego, you become subject to suffering. In the absence of the ego, you become free from suffering. That may lead you to think, oh, there's a solution. We're going to talk about this in the next verse. In fact, we'll use this to introduce the next verse. So you don't suffer in the absence of ego. Remember, a few minutes ago, I gave a strange example. Imagine having sadness present in your mind, but being in that odd condition where the I thought is absent. Like when you're lost in the music or in some kind of samadhi. I know it's not a common kind of experience at all, but imagine feeling sadness, but not having the sense, I am sad. Sadness is present in your experience, but you don't have the sense, I am sad. Therefore, you won't suffer. You can have sadness without suffering in the absence of the ahankara. This may lead you to think, oh, the solution then is to permanently remove the ahankara, the ego. You have to admit that when the ego is absent, when this I thought is absent, it's a blissful condition. Deep sleep, when the ego is absent, is a blissful condition. Samadhi, when the I thought is absent, is a blissful condition. When you're lost in the music, when the I thought is absent, it's a blissful condition. So one might make the wrong conclusion that the solution to the problem of suffering is to permanently obliterate, remove, destroy that ego, the ahankara. After all, it's the locus of suffering. There's a problem here. Maybe you've already seen this problem. Tell me, when you're lost in the music, what can you do? Can you function in the world when you're lost in the music in the absence of the ego? Or in samadhi, in the absence of the ego, while you're immersed in samadhi, can you function in the world? Can you walk and talk and eat and everything? No. And in deep sleep, obviously, the ego is gone, but you're non-functional. The point I'm making is that the ego is crucial for worldly interaction. We use the term vyavahara. Vyavahara has different meanings. Here we're using it in the sense of worldly interaction. All worldly interactions, all vyavahara depends on that I thought, that ego. Again, consciousness itself cannot be involved in the world because it's unchanging. And the mind itself cannot be involved in the world because it's jada, it's inert, it's not a sentient thing. Only when you have the mind in the presence of consciousness and there arises the I thought. In the presence of that I thought, you can relate, there is a possibility of worldly interaction, not in the absence of that I thought. So let us not think that the solution to the problem is to permanently remove the ego. That's not the solution. Then what is the solution? That's really the topic of the next verse. So let's see what is the solution to this problem of suffering. Rajju sarpavadatmanam, Rajju sarpavadatmanam, Jivam yatva bhayam vahet, Jivam yatva bhayam vahet, Naham jiva paratmeti, Naham jiva paratmeti, Jnatam chen nirbhayo bhavet, Jnatam chen nirbhayo bhavet. Rajju sarpavat. Here is our famous drishtanta, our famous metaphor. Sarpa, you may know as snake. Rajju is rope. Rajju sarpa is our famous rope snake. Rope snake is what you see when you're walking down that dark alley and there's a rope coiled up on the ground and you mistake that coil of rope for a deadly snake. And the consequence of that mistake is fear. And here fear represents all kinds of suffering. This verse focuses on fear. Fear is one kind of suffering, so fear then is representative of all kinds of suffering. When you mistake the rope for a snake, you suffer. Now, how to handle that problem? You see a snake where there's only a rope, what is the solution? So you might say that just to go back to my earlier comment, the locus of suffering we said was focused on the ahankara, so therefore remove the ahankara, which is a fallacious approach. Here, you might say that the locus of suffering is the snake. Just like we said before, the locus of suffering is the ego. Now we're saying the locus of suffering is the snake. If the locus of suffering is a snake, get rid of the snake. If the locus of suffering is the ego, get rid of the ego. Both of these arguments are wrong. So if you want to get rid of the snake, how will you get rid of the snake? Well, there's several approaches. One is silly, but close your eyes. If you close your eyes, the snake goes away. Of course, when you open your eyes, the snake is still there. It's not a very good approach. Alternatively, get a stick and beat that snake. Kill the snake. Wait a minute. There's no snake. Or run away from the snake. There's no snake. So the point I'm making is that the solution to the problem of fear of the rope snake, the solution doesn't lie in dealing with the snake. Understand that the snake is a projection. We used a term before, adhyasa, superimposition. The snake is superimposed on the rope. And the way you get rid of the snake is not by destroying the snake. The way you get rid of the snake and the fear caused by the snake is by understanding the rope to be a rope, by knowing the truth of the rope. So notice that even though the problem is caused by the snake, the solution is found not through dealing with the snake. The solution is found by going to the root of the problem, which is the rope. By knowing the truth of the rope, the snake is no longer a source of fear. By going to the root of the problem here, the root, the essence of who you are, by knowing your true nature to be Satchidananda Atma, by knowing your true nature to be unchanging, unborn, uncreated consciousness, vast, boundaryless, limitless consciousness, by knowing your true nature as such, your ego will no longer be a source of suffering. This is the point we're making. The solution to the fear caused by the snake is found not in dealing with the snake, but by finding out the truth of the snake to be the rope. In the same way, even though the ego, ahankara, I thought, is the locus of the problem of suffering, the way to deal with it is not by doing battle with the ego, ahankara, but by going to the root of the problem, the consciousness because of which that ego exists. Just like the rope exists because of, other way around, just as the snake exists because of the rope, the ego, ahankara, exists because of consciousness. You get rid of the snake and the fear caused by the snake by finding out the truth of the snake, which is rope. In the same way, you get rid of the fear and suffering, which is focus, whose locus is ego, ahankara. You solve the problem of suffering, which is focused on ahankara, by discovering the truth of ahankara. That because of which ahankara exists, which is consciousness, your true nature. And that's exactly what Shankaracharya is teaching us in this verse. He says, Raju sarpavat. Just like in the case of the rope snake, what about in the case of the rope snake? By knowing the rope, the snake and the fear caused by the snake goes away. Let me say that one more time. Just as in the case of the rope snake, by knowing the rope, the snake goes away and the fear caused by the snake goes away. That's the drishtanta, that's the metaphor. Shankara only gives here the darshtanta. The drishtanta he just gives us Raju Sarpa Vat. Just like in the case of the rope snake, and to fill that in, just like in the case of the rope snake, by knowing the rope, the snake goes away, and fear of the snake goes away. In the same way, now go back to the verse, in the same way, in the second line, Nyatva. Oh, excuse me, I got it the other way around. By sorry, I've got it backwards. The drishtanta here, still Raju Sarpa Vat, but by misidentifying the rope as a snake, excuse me, by misidentifying the rope as a snake, you suffer fear. That's the drishtanta. Due to misidentifying the rope as a snake, you suffer from fear. In the same way, Nyatva, by misidentifying Atmanam, your true self consciousness, by misidentifying your true self as Jivam. What was our definition of Jiva? Mind in the presence of consciousness gives rise to that I thought, I am sad, I am daughter, I am mother, I am son, I am father, etc., etc., etc. That one is Jiva, that composite entity. It's tricky. Jiva is not one thing. Jiva is a composite entity. As a minimum, Jiva includes these three factors. What are the three factors? Mind in the presence of consciousness with the I thought emerging as a result. That's a minimum definition of Jiva. Maximum definition of Jiva is throw in the body, mind, senses, and the roles, and your relationship with your family, your role at work, all of that together is a more elaborate definition of Jiva. The minimum definition of Jiva, mind in the presence of consciousness with the I thought emerging. So here, Shankara says, Nyatva, considering, mistaking, making the mistake of taking Atmanam, taking your true nature as consciousness, taking it to be Jiva, the individual person, this, and especially with reference to that I thought, due to that mistake, bhayam vahet, one experience, fear takes place. One is carried away by fear. Fear arises, and fear, as we said, was representative of all kinds of suffering. Let's see the whole half together. Raju Sarpa Vat, just as in the case of the rope snake, by mistaking the rope to be a snake, you experience fear. In the same way, by considering your true self, consciousness, to be this individual person with body, mind, senses, and that I thought, ego, by considering yourself to be that Jiva, your true nature is consciousness, but not knowing that, by making the mistake of taking yourself, Atmanam, taking yourself to be Jiva, this limited individual being, bhayam vahet, fear arises. So this is the first part. Due to misidentifying the rope, fear arises. Due to misidentifying your true nature, fear arises. How to get rid of that fear? As we said, the solution is not to get rid of the snake. The solution is to know the rope. The solution is not to get rid of the ego, the I thought, sense of individuality. The solution is to know the truth of yourself, to be consciousness, and that's what Shankara says in the second half here. He says, na aham jivaha paratma iti jnatam chet. In the second line, chet, and you have to break the words apart. Chet nirbhayaha. Chet, if jnatam, if this is known. If what is known? If what is known is in the third line, na aham jivaha. Aham, I, na jivaha. You understand that? I am not this jiva. I am not this limited body. I am not this mind. I am not mother, father, son, daughter. I am not male, female. I am not an engineer or a doctor. I am not young or old. I am not healthy or weak. What am I? Na aham jivaha. I am not all of that. What am I? Aham para atma. I am the supreme Atma self. I am pure, unchanging consciousness, which has no boundary or limit. I am vast, unchanging consciousness. With this knowledge, chet, if you have this knowledge, nirbhayaha bhavet. Bhavet, one becomes nirbhaya, free from fear. Putting the whole verse together, misidentifying the rope as a snake causes fear. Properly knowing the rope as a rope removes that fear. In the same way, misidentifying your true nature as this limited individual who is a mother, father, etc., that misidentification leads to fear and all other kinds of suffering. But properly discerning your true nature as unchanging consciousness, that knowledge leads to freedom from fear, freedom from all kinds of suffering. The snake is known to be false. Taking your body as me is known to be false. I have a body. I am not this body. Again, look at the identification that makes us suffer. I am male. I am young. I am old. I am sick. All of these wrong conclusions cause suffering. When you know yourself to be unchanging consciousness, that knowledge frees you from suffering. The commentator uses a nice expression. You need to see the rope as a rope. You need to see your true nature as unchanging consciousness. And how do you see the rope as a rope? You need jnana chakshus, eyes of knowledge. Sri Krishna uses the same term in the Bhagavad Gita. Beautiful expression, jnana chakshus. Chakshus means eye, jnana, knowledge. So eyes of wisdom, to be able to see the rope as a rope, to be able to understand your true nature as Satchidananda Atma. This is a solution to the problem of suffering. And this brings this current section to an end. The section encompasses verses, we just finished verse 26. So starting with verse 20 and ending with verse 26 were a sequence of verses in which Shankara was describing this problem of false attribution of mental activity to consciousness. False attribution, superimposition. Just as you superimpose the orangeness of the cloth on the clear crystal, in the same way you superimpose the sadness and other attributes of your mind, they get superimposed on consciousness, and that superimposition causes suffering. How to remove, just to make sure you understand, you do understand, how to remove the orangeness of this crystal. You get it. You don't need to do anything. The crystal is absolutely clear, even in the presence of the appearance of orangeness. You get it? So what is the solution to the suffering caused by sadness? You don't need to get rid of the orangeness for the sake of a clear crystal. You need to know the crystal is clear, in spite of the appearance of orangeness. In the same way, if you know sadness is a normal feature of your mind, just like orangeness is a feature of this cloth, sadness is a normal feature of your mind, and just like the orangeness of this cloth doesn't affect the crystal at all, you can know that the sadness that belongs to your mind doesn't affect consciousness at all. The consciousness which is your true nature. So that's what this whole section was about. Now we'll just begin. I'm not sure we'll get very far, but we'll start the next section, which describes the self-revealing Atma. Self-revealing. Let me introduce, I don't think we'll see the next verse, but let me introduce this idea, this topic. To get rid of the snake, you need to see the truth of the rope. So when you're in that dark alley, you see the snake. What do you have to do? There's another trick question, by the way. You see the snake. What is required to see the rope? Trick question. You see a snake. What is required to see the rope? And the fact is, you already see a rope. You've made a mistake. You have superimposed the snake on the rope, but in fact, you see a rope, and just to go back to a different perspective on this metaphor, if it were pitch black, you wouldn't even see the rope. If it were pitch black, you wouldn't see the rope, and if you didn't see the rope, you wouldn't superimpose the snake. The point I'm making is that in that dark alley, there's enough light, you do see the rope, but you falsely superimpose the snake on the rope. So if I ask you what is required to see the rope, you already see the rope. You've made a wrong conclusion about the rope because of this problem called superimposition. Now watch where this goes. This is what the whole next section is. In order to get rid of the snake, you see the snake, but the fact is you already see the rope. The solution to the problem of the snake is it's not a problem of your eyes. It's a problem of your thinking, your false superimposition of snakes. You have especially people who have a big fear of snakes are more likely to superimpose the snake on the rope. Two people, they both have 20/20 vision. One has no fear of snakes. The other has a very intense fear of snakes. You can imagine that the person who has a real fear of snakes is more likely to superimpose the snake on the rope. The point I'm making is that both have 20/20 vision. Both see the rope. One person superimposes the snake. Watch where this goes. To remove the problem of superimposition of sadness. Sadness gets superimposed on consciousness. To remove that problem of superimposition, I'm sorry, that line of explanation is not working for me, so let me set it aside and put it like this. In fact, it's the title of our text, Atma Bodha, knowledge of Atma, self. The solution to the problem of suffering is found in gaining Atma Bodha. But here's the funny part, and that is, just as in the dark alley you already see the rope, but you have a false conclusion about the rope, in the same way, right now, consciousness, which is Atma, which is your true nature, is already present in your experience right now as you're watching this class. Right now, the consciousness present in your experience, that consciousness is Atma. Can you really say Atma is unknown? This is tricky. Back in the alley, is a rope known or not? Trick question. I'm full of trick questions today. Is a rope known or not? Yes and no. You know that it is, but you don't know that it is a rope. You know there's something there. You may think it's a snake, but you know there's something there, but you misidentify it. So can we say that the rope is partially known? You know that the rope is, but you don't know that the rope is a rope, meaning you think the rope is a snake. In the same way, right now, right this moment, you know you are conscious. You know consciousness is, but you don't know that your consciousness is unborn, uncreated, unchanging, unlimited, boundaryless, vast, pure, complete, whole, divine. So just as the rope is partially known, you know that the rope is, you don't know what it is in fact. You don't know a rope as a rope. In the same way, you know consciousness is. You know your consciousness in general, but you don't know the true nature of your consciousness. So the fact that your consciousness is already present in this experience right now, but it's not known properly, that's why Shankara introduces this section by calling Atma self-revealing. The rope is already seen by you, but not recognized as a rope. Consciousness is already present in your experience right now, but not recognized as what it truly is. So we could say then that consciousness is self-revealing. Consciousness is present here and now in this experience, but not understood properly. This is our next topic, and we'll see that topic beginning with verse 27 in our next class. Om Sarve Bhavantu Sukhinaha Sarve Santu Niramayaha Sarve Bhadrani Pashyantu Ma Kaschid Dukkha Bhag Bhaveta Asato Ma Sadgamaya Tamaso Ma Jyotirgamaya Mrityorma Amritangamaya. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Om Tat Sat.